we're talking about him as like a top 3 middleweight of all time,
Yeah.
possibly top 2. Because unlike Izzy and unlike Rob, he will have beaten the past 3 middleweight champions.
All right, welcome to the Two Fight Fans. We talk about all things in combat sports. I'm one fight fan called.
I can't watch another Sean Strickland fight.
Oh yeah. So we had 312. We only did 2 picks for this. And
Yeah.
it seems
And
like
that's all we needed.
that was the right fucking call because goddamn. But all right. Stu, did you watch any of this card aside from the 2 fights that we picked?
I resent the framing of this question. I did watch this card. I just watched the only 2 fights that mattered on this card. The only 2 as an entertainment product that the UFC was selling us for $80 American, which in Canadian dollars is like $120 for a pay-per-view. Like imagine paying $120 for a pay-per-view. That's what we Canadians up here are paying. And yeah, this was not $120 worth of fights.
No, it really wasn't.
It really, really wasn't. What about you? Did you watch anything other than the top 2 fights?
I had part of the prelim card and the main card in the background. And
the background while you were jerking off? Like, what are you talking about? Like, what were you doing other than watching this?
I was like doing work and actually like being like a productive member of society.
And
okay,
so gooning. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know, and was a little tug and pull here, sure, maybe, but no, it was like it's exactly what it was. It was background. Like I didn't really miss anything, which was like, yeah, for this being like, this wasn't the first pay-per-view of the year, right? We've had other pay-per-views.
The second.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Makhachev and Moicano. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And this one very much fell in line with DDP and Strickland's first fight. In that, this whole card pretty kind of sucked.
Oh, not just sucked. It was legit bad. Like you said, it was background noise. It's the entertainment equivalent of leaving Love Is Blind on in the background while you're doing this, right? Like it's background noise, and it's a combat sport, something where you have to be paying attention a little bit more acutely than Love Is Blind. But the UFC went, nah, hold my beer. I'm going to show you the most background pay-per-view we've ever put on. This one sucked. This one was terrible top to bottom. This one was this card was bad.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we even start with this? Like, yeah, I mean, you tell me. Where do you want to start?
All right. Well, why don't we start from the fights that we actually predicted? Let's start with those 2, and then we can kind of just talk about the card as a whole after that. So, DDP versus Sean Strickland. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all I got.
Yeah. Colin, did this fight need to happen?
I mean, in that DDP, I guess, as a champion, needed to defend his title. Yes,
But why not just fight Hamzat?
That is, okay. Yes, I think that is the next true step, and like you can say theoretically, I guess, like Sean Strickland, he got his win, to get back, as the quote unquote number 1 contender or whatever, but like,
yeah, his one win.
Yeah, but he was champion, lost it, then got a win, so like, okay, reestablishes him at the top of the pecking order, so like, and it's a rematch, but like this rematch wasn't close at all. Like their first fight, did we say it was a split decision?
Yeah, it was a split decision.
Yeah, this one was nowhere near that. And let me ask you this: was this more because of DDP adjusted and got better in this last year, he's had more fights, he's got more experience, whatever, or was it just Sean Strickland just not being functional at all?
I would
It's not mutually
say
exclusive either. Not mutually
yeah,
exclusive.
I
So
this might be a case where I would say I mean, if I had to say there was one more than the other, I would say DDP getting better, but I would say really 50-50 because the two things that struck me were DDP being a little bit better about parrying the jab,
mhm.
right? Palms open, parrying the jab, and then immediately throwing most of his combinations leading, so that Sean Strickland had to have his lead hand up in order to block strikes, right? So going same side as the jab, overall. But also Sean Strickland just had a much lower output overall. Now, part of that is DDP hitting that left side of Sean Strickland, so he has to keep that hand kind of plastered to his cheek to prevent taking full punches. But it also just looked like Sean Strickland just had a lesser output overall.
Yeah.
And so it was this thing where I was like, this looks exactly like the first fight, but DDP kind of was a little bit more tactical. But again, he isn't DDP isn't capable of making like grand strategic improvements or grand like I guess like extremely nuanced changes, which totally alter the complexion of the fight. Right? He can do kind of his big doofus thing, and it can be somewhat more effective, somewhat less effective. But yeah, that's why I think it's 50-50. It was like Sean Strickland too much in his own head. Like, I won't say he's not tough, right? He got his nose busted and then like
Yeah.
reset
Yeah.
it himself. Very tough, but like I guess not like he doesn't have the mental toughness to go like I'm gonna get out of my comfort zone. Yeah, that's like a
Mhm.
different type, like he doesn't have the ability to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say 50-50. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it was a little bit of both. I saw a little bit of what did we call this? A de-evolution in Sean Strickland, in that like
Mhm.
literally he didn't do anything but throw a tepid jab. Like,
But that's what
uh,
he's always done.
yeah, but like it
No,
seemed
no, no.
even more like no, but it seemed more like I don't know if it's just because that's what we've come to expect, so we can see it more, or if it's like it looked particularly slower, or like just not, just like even before, like when he'd throw a jab out, at least it could like interrupt someone's rhythm or timing, but it didn't even seem to do that this time, you know?
Yeah, I think that's like less of like him devolving and just being like, well, two things. One, I think like the fans are catching on
Yeah.
that and I think it doesn't help that like Eric Nixick in his corner was like, you got to do different stuff. It's like I remember when Tyron Woodley was in that bad skid in the back of his career, and Dean Thomas would be like, "You got to throw in combination," and it's like, bro, have you ever seen Tyron Woodley throw in combination? Who are
Right,
you
right.
coaching right now? Right, like this fighter's been with you since the beginning. You've never seen him throw a combination, and now you're insisting at age 38 he throw in combination. Like that that's not in his wheelhouse. That that's not what he can do, and that's so like when Eric Nixick's like, you got to mix it up. It's like, bro, you've been with this guy.
Yeah.
He can't do that. So I think it's the fans catching on that that's all he does, and then like really seeing it for the first time and be like, why doesn't he do more? He talks this big game of saying I'm going to go to the death and only throws jabs. But I also think it's like by now too that jabbing performance got him to a title with Izzy. It lost him the title against Dricus du Plessis. It was the only thing he threw against Paulo Costa. And so the fighters as well are like, all I got to do is figure out how to stifle that jab. And Dricus du Plessis was able to do it a little bit better. Not even like expertly either, just a
Mhm.
little bit better than he did last time. And so it's just like, now the fans are seeing it and the fighters are seeing it. You've just been found out, man. You've just been found out entirely. So it can make it feel like a devolution, because like we're finally recognizing it fully for what it is, and the other fighters are able to like address it much more clearly than they have in
Yeah.
the past,
Yeah.
Yeah.
This demonstrates a few things to me. One, there are a lot of like underdeveloped people in
Y-
the middleweight division, because like the
Yes.
jab is like the number one striking technique that anyone should ever learn ever.
Offen
So you should be able to know how to deal with it. And if you
Hold on.
don't know how to deal with it, like you
I gotta
shouldn't be
push
moving to the upper echelons here.
That's true, but I gotta push back. MMA fighters never have a jab, dude. Name, like,
That
5 fighters that had a good jab in MMA,
Okay, that's fair.
right? Like,
But
you got George St. Pierre, you got Max Holloway, you got Dustin Poirier, Sean Strickland, like, there's so few, you know?
but because there's so many more techniques, you would think that someone would have figured out, like, what if I shoot on this guy? You know?
Yeah, that's true.
Like
I
like
I will
it
say, like, Dricus Du Plessis shot on Sean twice. I think he only got him down once, and Sean was up immediately. Like, he does have decent takedown defense, and, like, get up from the ground.
Mhm.
He just, like, I think that's the thing is, like, Sean Strickland, I think the thing that makes him so uncomfortable to fight is, like, he is super defensively sound. He can block most things. He's really good at takedown defense. He can, like,
Mhm.
defend most of your offense. The issue is just, like, he has no offense himself, but
Right.
people in MMA get so they're like, "Oh my god." Because MMA primarily 90% of your matches is gonna be people with 0% defense and 100% offense. It just becomes a war of, like, who's got the better offense.
Yeah.
So when people actually run into defense, they go, "Oh, this is so scary. I don't like it." Yada yada yada.
Mm.
Um, but Dricus is too much of a dipshit to, like, be dissuaded by any of that stuff, you know? Like, he's like, "I don't care. I'll keep going." Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So
But the other thing that's exposed is, like, Sean Strickland's whole training philosophy where all he does is spar. Because
Mhm.
if all you do is spar, yeah, it would make sense, like, okay, I've developed a jab, like, 1, but that's, like, how I can go for so long in sparring. Like, I'm not having, like, heavy engagements where I'm, like, constantly, like, trying to shoot for a takedown or I'm constantly defending against submissions off my back or things like that. It's like,
Mhm.
"Hey, I'm just cruising by jabbing the whole time," you know?
Mhm.
Like, if that's all you do in your training, then yeah, okay, then, like, that is one habit that you're developing, and then that's all it becomes. So, yeah, I think this is a very good warning just to show people why sparring as your sole, like, training methodology doesn't work.
Oh, I'd push back against that slightly because what I will say is, like, Sean Strickland has wins over Paulo Costa, Israel Adesanya,
Yeah.
Nasruddin Imavov, right? Like, Jack Hermanson, your Ryan Hall, Brendan Allen, just with that jab. It turns out having a jab and decent defense in MMA is still enough to
It's still
beat,
enough.
like, 95% of a division. Now,
I
whether it can keep
That's an
you in
indictment on the division then.
yeah. I mean, I think that's absolutely true. And this, I mean, a jab heavy defense focused fighter could work at heavyweight, light heavyweight, middleweight, fuck, even welterweight to some degree. He might
To
not
some
have as
degree,
much
yeah.
of much
Yeah.
success, but, like, I mean, it's kind of an indictment just on, like, MMA fighters and these upper weight divisions, right? Like,
Yeah.
overall.
Yeah,
Um,
that's fair.
so, like, it does show that, like, his training kind of staying static and only focusing on sparring, um, isn't gonna allow him to beat, probably. But I mean, he's beaten Imavov. Like, could he beat Imavov again? Maybe because, like, Imavov did seem to struggle with Izzy's jab,
Mhm.
in their last fight. So it's like this weird thing of, has hit on the most important punch in all of boxing is the jab, and everyone in MMA routinely is like, "No, no, no, it's the overhand right." And he goes, "No, I think I'll actually learn how to throw a disciplined jab." It's just he
Right.
forgot to learn anything else, and so when you go up against the top of the division, it's just not gonna work as well. Yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing. I think for all of our sakes, because Strickland has
Yep.
routinely been an extremely boring fighter, I don't think
Ooh.
we'll ever see him fight for a title again. Because, like, he's lost twice to DDP. If Hamzat wins, like, what is Strickland gonna have to do to get back to this title shot? Like, he'll probably have to win, like,
Yeah, 2 or 3 fights,
3
yeah.
fights? 4 fights? Um, and he's getting older, right? He got his nose busted to bits by DDP, and we've seen routinely with fighters that get their noses absolutely
Lastigated.
lastigated. It's pretty easy to
Yeah.
yeah, it's easy to break that nose again, you know? We see that with Rory McDonald. We've seen that. Who else have we seen that with?
Yeah.
Seen it with like quite a few fighters, especially in MMA, where it's like their just nose doesn't hold up anymore. That's a damage. So, what do you do next with
Actually,
Sean
so
Strickland?
I think part of this also determines like I promise you I will talk about what's next for Sean Strickland, but I want to ask you, who is more deserving of the next title shot? Hamzat or someone else in the middleweight division? And
It's
whether
got to
that
be
can
Hamzat.
actually happen or not, like, just take the whole like he can't enter the country thing. Like let's forget that because that probably will change. Will Hamzat stay healthy enough to actually train and pursue a title shot? Because that's a question. That's a toss up right there.
I
Okay.
Yeah, I think so, because it's kind of like for every fight that he cancels, he does show up for the next one. The issue is it's like
Yeah.
he only is scheduled to fight once a year, and it's because of these visa issues. If they have a lot more of the calendar to work with, so he can get injured or get sick, and then come back 3 months later for a different card, as opposed to only being like basically the Abu Dhabi cards in October. So if you miss that one fight
Mhm.
camp, ah shit, now we gotta wait till the next year. Um, I think he probably
Okay.
can be healthy enough to do this. Um, yeah, and if he can't, like in the meantime, like let's say it is like we have to push this off till October. Like DDP can just in the same way that um Anderson Silva kind of moonlighted at light heavyweight, but not for title fights. He just fought like Forrest Griffin. He just fought like Stephen Bonner, just like
Mm.
random ranked light heavyweights for fun. Like, why not just have a DDP Yuri Prochazka fight at light heavyweight just for shits and giggles? If we're waiting for like Hamza, because then even if DDP loses, you go, all right, well he'll just drop back down and fight Hamzat, and if he wins, it's like great. We've got the Poatan match or the Ankalaev match lined up, whenever, or even if like because I know Ankalaev and Poatan are fighting in March. Even if Poatan loses to Ankalaev, you can still do DDP and
Sure.
Alex Pereira
Sure.
just as a non-title fight for fun. Right? That'd be a cool, fun fight to watch. Like that could headline a pay-per-view even without a title. Like that's a goofy, silly fight I'd be willing to watch. So
All right.
yeah.
So yeah, I've got 3 options then for you for DDP. What are the most exciting and interesting to you? Both
Okay.
on stylistic matchups, what it does for the division, what it does for the UFC as a whole. So here's your 3. So Hamzat,
Yeah.
who's currently ranked number 3.
Yeah.
Okay. Imavov, who is currently ranked number 2 with his win over Adesanya.
Silly.
Okay. Or Alex Pereira dropping back down to try and become double champ.
No. So no. You can't have Alex Pereira be dropping back down. That's we've seen that his chin is a lot more susceptible.
Yeah.
When he goes to 185 per his fights at 205, showing that he's got much more durability. And DDP is a big boy. I'd prefer to see him go up. But no, it has to be Hamzat, right? Just like we were talking about last week, we're trying to figure out order and what even the fuck is this division? And it's this thing of like, we need to see if Hamzat is going to blow DDP out of the water. Because if he does, DDP can just move up, fight Poatan. It's still an interesting fight. Or if he beats, dude, if DDP beats and not only beats, but finishes Hamzat, we're talking about him as like a top 3 middleweight of all time, possibly top 2. Because unlike Izzy and unlike Rob, he will have beaten the past 3 middleweight champions in a row. He will have beaten Rob, Sean, and Izzy all in a row, and then Hamzat.
Yeah.
Right? Rob never defeated Chris Weidman. He never defeated Anderson Silva. Izzy only beat Anderson Silva after like a long, like this was, Anderson continuing to lose.
Yeah.
He never beat Chris Weidman. He never beat Luke Rockhold. Like this would be the most like I beat the old generation. I beat my current generation, and I'm about to beat this like new generation that we're seeing come through. And he would do it so quickly in like 10 fights. We have to see that.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
got to be. It's so weird too to talk about DDP in that way because
It
it
really
doesn't
is.
feel that. It's like all of his wins have kind of snuck up on us besides this one as being like, nah, he's not going to do it. Oh, shit, he did. Okay. Well, he'll get exposed in the next fight. Oh, shit, he didn't. Right? And it's like we're 1 or 2 fights away from going, well, he's in the top 3. He might beat out Izzy as the number 2 best middleweight of all time. And that's crazy.
A
And then he
fucking
might go up
wild
and
thing to say.
yeah, it is, right? Like,
Yeah.
but if you beat Sean Strickland twice, you finish Izzy and you finish Rob. Like that's dude. And then you beat Hamzat. God damn. That's a resume.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's what DDP has to do. It has to be Hamzat next, and then you can kind of go. I mean, I would like to see him fight Imavov. I would like to see him fight Carvalho, or if Imavov and Bahalio have a kind of number 1 contenders
That would be
elimination
good.
fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, like do that. But dude, if he beats those 2, then it's like, yeah, just go up to Poetan's division and fight there.
Yeah.
Like, dude, a DDP Yuri fight. Ever since you put that on my brain, I'm like, that's the jankiest, goofiest looking thing on earth. That's fucking Roger Rabbit, donkey ass. Like, that's the stupidest thing I could think of. And I'm like, I guess I got to see it.
I do want to see that, but I kind of just want to see Yuri drop down. Like, can he mix things up at middleweight now? Like, because you said he doesn't cut weight. He's like naturally 207.
It would be interesting to see Yuri if they like gave Yuri a Rob Whittaker or like Sean Strickland fight, right? And then go, if you can beat one of these guys, you get right to the front of the line for DDP.
Yeah,
that'd be pretty interesting.
I'd be down with that. Sean Strickland versus Yuri fight would be hilarious.
So, I mean, back to the original question: what do you do with Sean Strickland next? Like, what do you think is?
Yeah, fuck it. Give him Yuri.
Like Yuri's the most fun, but what do you think is the most likely fight the UFC gives him?
Maybe him and Izzy again if they wanna either him and Izzy or him and Robert to keep one of those 2, like see if they can bounce back from their like recent skids. Maybe Robert more than anyone. Since Izzy's has like multiple losses in a row like that. Because I think it's got to be a Hamzat is the next challenger, and then Imavov versus Kyle Bahalio. When you said that, like that's very interesting to me for a new number 1 contender. I like that fight a lot. That's really interesting. But Sean Strickland against Izzy or Robert.
Is there anyone we're not thinking of?
That could be good.
Like he did get his nose pancaked in this fight.
Yeah.
Like, so he's going to need to recover from that. And it sounds like Rob and Izzy are both looking to make June returns. That might be a little fast for the old face explosion. Is there anyone else we're not thinking of for Sean Strickland?
I mean, maybe the winner of Jared Cannonier and Hobocop.
That'd be pretty good.
Yeah.
Dude, a Hobocop Sean Strickland I'd enjoy.
Okay.
Sounds
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I'm also wondering, like, I don't know if Kamaru Usman is still around. But that was the fight that Kamaru Usman beat Sean Strickland and sent him to 185. Like, that'd be an interesting rematch, especially because, like, Usman's also pretty old and shot, and, like, it's looking more and more like Sean Strickland's kind of shot as well.
Yeah, yeah.
That might be. The hard thing is, like, again, DDP has routinely really entertaining fights to watch overall, right? Like, I'm not going to say good. I'm not going to say exciting. I'll just say, like, entertaining. Every time, or not every time, the 2 times he's fought Sean Strickland, they're the most boring as shit fights possible, right? They're just so boring. And so I'm just like, we need someone. If DDP can't make Strickland entertaining, we have to find someone who might be able to, like, kind of increase the entertainment value.
Yeah.
The Izzy fight was not entertaining, and I assume it wouldn't be entertaining this time. Yuri would definitely make it entertaining.
I would love that. I'm down for that, man.
Yeah.
I like Yuri. I'm a fan of Yuri now. Like, him is just this goofy everything. I like him,
man. We're definitely the famine season of MMA, and it's like we got to take what we can get. And if it's goofy ass Yuri talking about screaming into waterfalls, like, I guess that's
I'm with it.
I guess that's what we're doing. Yeah. But this fight sucked.
Yeah. Oh,
Middleweight sucks.
yeah. Overall, it was bad.
Yeah, it's bad. I hope DDP fights Hamzat next. It's just what a it's really like the UFC didn't need to make this fight either. They could have easily made the Hamzat fight next, right? They didn't need
Yeah.
Hamzat to fight Robert. They could have just been like, we're gonna fast track him in the same way that they fast tracked Tatiana Suarez. They could have been, hey, DDP is just gonna get a rematch with Rob because Rob if Sean Strickland got off of one victory off Paulo Costa a rematch, why didn't Rob get it with the knockout of who was it? Ikram Aliskerov? Was that
Yeah.
who it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I would have much preferred to see a DDP Rob rematch. It at least would have been more entertaining because probably somebody would have gotten finished.
Mhm.
And this just was like, ugh, who cares? Who
Yeah.
cares? Yeah. Well, let's talk about the other garbage fight, which I totally got wrong. Colin, where did I go wrong in my prediction that Tatiana Suarez would beat Zhang Weili?
Dude, so here's the thing. I because you've seen more Tatiana Suarez fight than I
Mhm.
have. Do you think this is a result of just ring rust and not being as active? Or do you think she was overhyped? Because a big thing about her was supposed to be like she's just so dominant on the ground. She's so strong. If she takes you
Mhm.
to the ground, like you're toast. And I even said like, yeah, Zhang Weili, she has been taken down many times before, and like doesn't seem to know isn't super comfortable off her back. And you said like her grappling is very much top heavy game, where if she initiates or counters off of the throws and lands on top, then she is very dominant on the ground.
Mhm.
And that's what we saw. Like, there's I think one in the first round. I scored the first round for Tatiana Suarez, and like, but that was it. And then
Yeah.
Zhang Weili was able to not just like defend against the takedowns, but get some of her own. So
Mhm.
again, I didn't know if this was just, hey, Tatiana Suarez is just really out of practice, out of conditioning for this kind of fight, this kind of affair.
Mhm.
Maybe her health is kind of like Hamza, like, hey, she's got like one round in her. If she doesn't execute it
Mhm.
there, it's going to be a long night for her. Or was she just not
Well,
as
like
good
I
as
did
we
call
actually
out
thought
that
she
like the
was?
last time we saw her in a 3-round fight, which was like
She
2019,
she gassed out hard. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess the thing is like she came into the UFC in 2016.
Yeah, almost 10
That
years ago now.
that was
Jesus.
back when Ioane and Jacek was ruling this division,
Mhm.
right? And like a really strong wrestler was not really a part of the DNA of the elite at this division with Rose and Ioane Jacek and Jessica Andrade, right? It was pretty striking heavy and takedown offense. For context, this is also like she came into the UFC when Khabib Nurmagomedov was beating Michael Johnson and Edson Barbosa, hadn't even won the title yet,
Oh, jeez.
right? Like her peak really was 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, kind of that 3-year spread. But this is again Khabib talking about like a dominant wrestler. Khabib only beat Conor in the end of 2018, right? So like how much has the game changed at lightweight since Khabib and Conor fought, right? It's
Right.
changed quite a bit. So in 2016 to 2019, if she was able to put rounds together, do I think she could have beaten Ioane and Jacek or Rose Namajunas? I think so. I think kind of like history bears out that they struggled with strong wrestlers at that time in their career, and then later as they fought more and more strong wrestlers. Uh, but like we can't underestimate if you're routinely injured and you're getting one fight each year, as much as people like to go like, "Oh, well, you're in the training room getting better," without the actual reps in a live fight,
Yeah.
you're not improving as much. And then also like it sounds like when she was injured, it wasn't just like, "Oh, I'm injured so I can't do a full fight camp." Like between 2019 and 2023, she just was like almost not training at all.
Right.
And as much as you're like, wow, I had a really great skill set that was ahead of the game in 2016, 2017, 2018, that shit's not going to hold up in 2024 if you
Mhm.
haven't kept up to date with everything.
Yeah.
And on top of that, even if your skill set was really advanced, and let's say you haven't advanced it, your body is also just kind of aged. You know what I mean? Like it just seems she. I think the hype that we had in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019 was like well deserved, but it's 2025 now. Like she's 9 years older than when she first had this hype. She's 5 years older from when, like, she disappeared from the sport, um, and couldn't upgrade her game in any way. So, I think that's a bad recipe, especially against Zhang Weili.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
yeah.
yeah, you're saying just basically
Yeah, I
time
think I
moved
think
past her,
really
unfortunately.
and not just, like, time, like, I really do think, like, not getting reps in across those many years fighting,
Yeah.
and it looked like she hadn't like, her game, if you go back and look at it in 2019, 2018, 2017, her fighting style, it's very much the same. Her striking hasn't much improved. Her grappling technically, like, hasn't much improved, but what, like, she's also lost is just, like, the pep in her step, the
Yeah.
explosiveness, the athleticism, just because she's aged, and so it's like, man, if you haven't made up for that with a massive skill development, even though you were so far ahead of the game moves so fast. Like you're gonna be shit out of luck. And we
Yeah.
saw that. We saw that after one round, she just couldn't do anything to
Yeah.
Zhang Weili. And like it was impressive to see Zhang Weili like so thoroughly kind of win this fight in every area. But I also was like, I'm not seeing anything technically from Zhang Weili that I didn't already know. So it's not like, oh, Zhang Weili really leveled up to beat this opponent. It's just like, this is just, I mean, this is like if George St. Pierre fought fucking Carlos Newton, you know? This is like if if
Wow.
if
Damn.
Khabib fought Frankie Edgar. It's like it's just a different era of MMA
Yeah.
fighting against a modern era. And it just that doesn't work, man. It
Yeah.
just doesn't work.
No,
Um,
that I think that's a very, very accurate and uh well put together assessment of this fight, because that's exactly what it looked like. It looked like a mismatch, but not like, but a mismatch of time.
yeah.
Like two fighters who are like pretty high skill or high level, but at different time periods, and
Yeah.
it
Which
just
and you
doesn't
saw it
match
in
up.
that first round, right? Because Tatiana definitely got the takedown, but it
Yeah,
was like, man, you really aren't like the meta for grappling in MMA is like absolutely dealing a ton of ground and pound by like grabbing a wrist and then like kind of getting someone to half turtle and then like pounding their face, kind of like Khabib. And she just like didn't have that. She just
yeah,
like had no ground and pound. Or it's moving to the back, a la Aljamain Sterling and Hamzat Chimaev, where their entire attack is based on like just absolutely getting to the back so that they have the best chance of getting a choke in. And she just didn't. She wasn't advancing to the back. She wasn't advancing into any sort of like grabbing of wrists and like freeing up a hand for ground and pound. It was very 2010s MMA. You
yeah,
know, I'm going to sit in your full guard. I'm going to try to pass to half, see what I can do. And like, that doesn't cut it anymore. It would have cut it in 2018 if she fought Rose or Ioana and Jacek then. I think maybe she could have won, but it's 2025.
yeah.
It's just so far away. Um, yeah. Uh, so what do we do with Zhang Weili?
I want her. I want her to rematch Yan Xiaonan after Yan Xiaonan gets past John Daroba in, what is
I'm
it,
not sure
March,
when Yan
April?
Xiaonan is fighting
She's
next.
fighting,
Okay.
yeah, April, on the same card that Pantoja fights Kai Kara France, so in
Okay.
Florida. So yeah. So if Yan Xiaonan gets past that, past Janjaroba, then, which I think she will, then a rematch between those two with one of my predictions for the year in
Yeah,
China.
in China, that'd be good. It'd be now. What about Shevchenko versus Zhang Weili? I
Yeah,
guess what do
I
you
mean, I
prefer?
just
No, no, no.
where do I put her if she
Which do you
went up against
prefer? Do you
Shevchenko?
prefer her fighting Yan Xiaonan next,
Yes,
assuming Yan Xiaonan wins, or Shevchenko?
Yan
It
Xiaonan.
might be
Yes,
interesting if you
that
do,
one.
because I know like Manon Ferrot is the rightful kind of number one for Shevchenko. If you do Shevchenko, Ferrot, and then Xiaonan and Wiley in like main and co-main events, and then
Oh.
the winners of those two fight each other.
Mhm.
Because we might see a full turnover of like, because that's I don't know. Do you spoil that like? Because if you do Ferrot versus Shevchenko first and Ferrot wins, it's not as big of a fight for Zhang Weili to go up and fight Meno Ferrot.
Right,
You kind of
right.
want the Shevchenko name attached.
Yeah.
Especially because they're both getting older, right? What is Shevchenko 36, 37, and Zhang
Probably
Weili's 35?
yeah.
So do you I don't know. What do you think? I guess what would you predict the UFC would do?
Ah, I think,
Ah,
if they did a pay-per-view card in China with Zhang
mhm.
Weili headlining against Yan Xiaonan, that'd be
That's
huge.
true. Now, here's the thing.
Like
Dana White's close friends with someone. I don't know if you've heard this person. Their name is Donald Trump.
yeah, yeah.
Donald Trump's not a big fan of China. So,
No.
like, do you think they'll go there for a card?
I mean, Dana White also does whatever the fuck he wants, and Dana White is a bigger fan of
That's true.
himself and money.
That's true.
So, like,
I feel like if it was
you
Kamala
know,
Harris as president, he might be more likely to go to China for these cards. Maybe I'm like
mhm.
misunderstanding kind of the political alignment of the oligarchical elites, but I don't know. Yeah. It would be cool to see
Yeah.
Zhang Weili and Shevchenko
Ah,
in China, though. That would be pretty dope. Yeah, yeah. Or yeah.
yeah, that would be good too. I think the Zhang Weili and Yan Xiaonan fight will be a more
What do you think
competitive
will happen
affair,
in the
though.
Shevchenko Weili fight?
I think it's gonna be pretty it'll be very point fighty, like, one strike at a time, not a
Mm.
lot of stand-up combination work because both of them have, like we said, have
Mhm.
devolved into that because they haven't really needed anything else. And I think Shevchenko's just too big for Zhang Weili. Like, I don't think Zhang Weili will have the grappling,
Mm.
like, success. Like, she might take Shevchenko down maybe in the first round or something, but then I think it's just gonna be I think she's just gonna be too
Interesting.
big, you know? And if Shevchenko can take
Mhm.
Zhang Weili down and hold her down, like she did in her last fight against Alexa Grasso, then I don't see Zhang Weili being able to get out of
See,
that
I have
against
a
a bigger,
different
stronger
read.
person.
Alexa Grasso used to fight at 115,
Oh,
then went up to 125. Alexa
yeah.
Grasso is pretty good about not being held down for the first two fights she had against Shevchenko. But we talked about Grasso's takedown defense devolving and like her forgetting the types of takedowns Shevchenko goes for across the three fights. I feel like John Wiley might. She's definitely better schooled than Grasso. I do agree it might end up being a
Mhm.
boring fight, but I'd actually pick. I'd take a pick on Zhang Weili to beat Shevchenko. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so
That's
I think that'd be
interesting.
good. I'd be happy to see Zhang Weili versus Yan Chanan though, and Meno Firo versus Shevchenko because there could just be turnover in both divisions. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
What do we do with Suarez? Like, is it?
Ugh.
I don't. Do you? Yeah.
Maybe the loser of Yan
Do we
Xiaonan and
cut her
Verna
and let her go to the
Jandiroba.
PFL? Here's the thing: do we trade? So her boyfriend or husband is Patchy Mix in the PFL. Very dynamic, 135 pounder.
Okay.
Do we do a swap in the PFL for Patchy Mix and we trade Suarez over from the UFC so that what's her name? Divichenko has someone else to
Oh,
fight
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
and like we just make that trade.
Oh.
Because I don't see
Yeah,
Suarez
that
really. I
could
mean, I guess Suarez could
from
just
a
go up to 125 and try her luck there, right? Like maybe fight Rose
yeah, I
Namajunas
just
because Rose is kind of in a weird spot too. See if it'll
Oh,
work
sure.
there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I don't know. It's like, yeah, can she even stay healthy? Her knee exploded or like got
Yeah.
what? It
Yeah,
looked like
what was
it was
that?
kind of that, like, Jake
Jesus.
Ellenberger thing. Remember when he got his, like, ankle caught in between the, like, the canvas and the actual fencing? It looks like she
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
you think she
saw,
just
like, a
ran into the
GIF of
cage or
her,
something?
like, shooting a double leg and planting her knee basically right there, and it looks like her knee kind of goes in slightly, and then when she stands up, it looks like there's a gash, so it
Ugh.
looks like it's kind of a, um, issue with the octagon and the way that they set it up, that she just, like, hit, like, a metal piece there and
Oh, God.
sliced open her knee. Um, yeah, just fucked up
Ugh,
and
yeah.
bad, but, I don't know. I don't see her really kinda going. No.
Yeah,
Um
I don't see. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like you
and it's
said,
really
the
sad
sport has
because she
moved on,
was such a
so
hot prospect. Undefeated, absolutely blasted through the Ultimate Fighter season that she was on, then came through in 2016, 2017.
mhm.
We all were like, "Oh my god, we've never seen a woman in MMA wrestle like this," and just smashing fools. And then routinely got injured and, like,
Yeah.
again, it's a really there are people that get injured and have, like, fights called off a lot, but you can tell that they're still training and they're still keeping up with kind of the meta. It looks like she just got so injured in between fights that she couldn't even train to keep up with the advancements in the game. So all she could do was maintain her current level, and
Mhm.
it's not enough over the course of
Yeah.
like we said, 9 years between her debut and actually getting a
Yeah.
title shot. Longer than most careers. Most careers in the UFC are 3 to 4 years. More than doubled that, and, like, didn't really change her style at all. That's brutal. Yeah.
Alright. Well,
Yeah.
this was a pay-per-view, so I wanna do our segment. Remember, we
Oh,
said we
yeah,
were gonna
yeah,
be
okay.
more positive this year as well, so I want you to tell me, 1,
Oh,
your favorite thing from this fight, positive
card.
one positive thing from this card, and then your donkey brains moment of
Mm.
this card. Yeah, of the card, of the whole card. Your favorite
Mhm,
thing, something that you
mhm.
liked is we're taking some positives here, and then what the people really wanna
Right.
know, your donkey brains moment of this card. This
Well,
is
let's start with
Stu's
the
donkey
positive.
brains
The
corner.
fact that, Israel Adesanya and
Start with
Kevin
positive.
Gastelum's fight, one of the best fights I've ever seen, made it
Yeah,
into the Hall of
yeah,
Fame. It made the fight wing of the Hall of Fame make sense to me, and I was like, "Right on.
yep,
That's
yep,
fucking dope. Put it in."
yeah, yeah, yeah. Also, throughout the whole weekend, just apparently Izzy and
It's
Alex just
cool.
hanging out the whole time, like, and saying like, "Yeah, it's it's like you said before, like, that Izzy doesn't have that, like, hateful spirit anymore. He's, like, going around trying to make amends and, like, have positive relationships with people that he used to just, like, absolutely trash and shit on
Yeah, it
online
does
and
seem
in
like he's kind of
person,
entered a
like.
different part in his life where he's like, "I don't need to be angry. I don't even need to really have competitive animosity towards any of these people." And it's kinda like, "Great, man. You
Yeah.
probably shouldn't fight anymore." Right? It's just like, like, that's you kinda need that if you're gonna or at least it seemed like something that helped fuel him. Uh, and yeah, and so
Yeah,
without
it was
that, not saying
motivating for
every
him.
fighter needs this or that it is the guaranteed, like, recipe for success, but at least for Izzy, it did seem to be a crucial part of his success. Um, so just go around and be cool with everybody, man. Like, you don't need to fight no more. Uh, but that is a positive. Him
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Poatan saying "chama" constantly, regardless of the fact of, like, what the fuck that means or, like, why he says it. Um and then, yeah, seeing that fight get in there, that's my positive. The donkey brains moment of the, card,
Yeah,
it's gotta
of
be,
the
and I
night.
called it out before,
Yeah.
it's gotta be Eric Nixick, the main trainer of Sean Strickland, who knows exactly and has known for, like, 6 to 8 years how Sean Strickland fights, going, "You gotta not keep just doing the jab, I need different things from you," and going, "When has he ever shown you he even has that capability, my man?" Because we've all sat there with our eyeballs gone, Sean Strickland doesn't throw anything else other than a jab. I've been saying that shit since at least before we started this podcast, and so the fact that his head coach is
Yeah,
begging
yeah.
him for that, that's great and all, but he can't do it, man. He just can't do it, so you gotta be giving him other advice. because that's not how this dude fights. Um, yeah, you can't if you have a fighter that you know is terrified to throw punches or terrible at getting takedowns or like really bad at one area, you can't insist they try to go to that area. Because you have to meet your fighter where they're
Mhm.
at. And Eric Nixick just wasn't able to do that. We could also say Sean Strickland had the biggest donkey brains for thinking he could just fight the exact same way he fought last time and still win despite losing in the past. But like hearing Eric Nixick being
Mhm.
like, "You're doing the same thing you did last time." It's like that's what he does every time, man. That's what he does every time. Why do you think it's the classic? It's I brought it up last time. Like it's the Dean Thomas Tyron Woodley thing. You got to throw in combinations, Tyron, and it's like not once in his entire MMA career has he strung more than 2 punches together, ever. What are you talking about? Telling him on a 5-fight losing streak that that's what he has to change up. The dude's not gonna change it up. If he could do it, he would have done it already, and he's not. So that's my donkey brains.
Mhm.
People going into fights with their fighters and being like, I can just tell them to fight entirely differently than they've, like, encoded into their brain. So, Eric Nixick,
Mhm.
that's not how it's gonna work, dude. Anyway, do you have any other honorable donkey
Mhm.
brains or heartfelt nice moments you want to call out?
No, the Izzy announcement of Izzy and Kevin Gastelum's fight
Mhm.
getting into the Hall of Fame was great. Seeing him kind of just
Mhm.
be an overall happier person, like I appreciate that. I like that a lot more. Yeah, donkey
Yeah.
brains, man. Like this whole fucking card, like, it's like I can't. It's just the fact that nothing really caught my like excitement or like I was like, oh, like this is great. Oh, this is like something good that's happening for the division. Like it's just like great. Like I
Yeah.
didn't have to watch this card. I could have literally looked it up on Wikipedia the next
Bingo.
day and be like, okay, there we go. Like that's it. And next, and that should not be the case of any of your like high caliber fights, let alone
Yeah,
like your
you shouldn't be
champions.
charging the consumer base
Like that's not what you want
$80
to
for that
see.
shit. This was an Apex card that the government of Sydney, New South Wales paid 20 million for, and we know that for a fact. So, I guess the Donkey Brains award goes to the tourism board of Sydney, Australia for paying 20 fucking million dollars for this dog shit card overall. Um, actually, yeah,
Yeah,
we got because
yeah,
it's just so bad. You gotta pull a Saudi Arabia and go, no, 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 you can't give us this. You gotta put Volk on there. You gotta put Robert Whitaker on there. You gotta put somebody worthwhile
yeah,
watching on there. Even if we're gonna keep it.
yeah. It really is. God, the UFC is totally fumbling all this time. All these times where they go to like major locations where you have a number of fighters there, that could like help fuel the
Mhm.
excitement of the
I mean,
actual fan base there.
that's the nature of a monopoly, right? Is they have a monopoly on this market, so they become slaves to the calendar, regardless of the quality. They go, what's most important is we just fill these contractually obligated cards, regardless of, right? And we've talked about this. Why do the Apex cards have these like one decent fight on there that actually would make a pay-per-view way better if it was on the main card rather than the slop they put on like the first or second fight of a pay-per-view? And it's just like this weird, hey, we have a contractual obligation. We got to fill it with one fight at least. They fill each one with one fight and they go, great, what other slop can we throw in for the rest of these cards? This is why Monopoly is
Mhm.
bad. This is why, like, the government needs to step in on like the UFC and their repressive contracts, because this is what happens to us as fans is the UFC goes, great, we don't have any competition, we can dilute the product. Um, right? Like it's I feel like an old codger for saying it, but like it didn't used to be this way. It used to be that like every UFC card, or at least every other UFC card, was good and worthwhile to watch. And now it's like one out of every like 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 cards you need to watch, or you need to watch one fight across the course of 3 months. Like every card over 3 months, watch one fight from each, and then that's one decent card. It's a nightmare, dude. It's terrible.
Mhm.
I don't wanna watch this shit. Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
like, that's why we're
Yeah.
not even gonna talk about this upcoming Apex card, 'cause we already made the call on the 2 fights that are, like, moderately interesting, but they might suck too. So, fuck that shit, I'm not talking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a grade for this card now that we've watched it? Yeah, definitely. It's
Like
probably a D minus.
D.
Probably a Drickus Duplessis. It's double DP, it's bad. One other thing we gotta touch on. The owner of TKO, Ari Emanuel, has come out and said that at least hinting at repealing the All E Act. Colin, for fans that don't know what the All E Act is and why it might be bad to repeal that in the United States, can you give them a too long didn't read?
Okay. TLDR of the Ali Act. The Ali Act was basically established. Oh, what you or was
In the
put into
year
play what in the
2000, I
early
think it was drafted in
2000s?
96.
Okay. So basically, it only applies to boxers, which I learned today after talking with Stu earlier. It only relates to boxers, and basically, some of the main things it does is to protect boxers from being exploited by whether it's their managers, their promoters, which, by the way, in boxing have to be separate because of this act, and it's basically like it forces promoters to say this is how much is being paid out to the fighter, so there can't be any fuckery, like you said, of oh, you'll be paid this, but then we'll pay you more based off the gate or based off the whatever, and then they never get paid. It's like this is what you are being paid out. It also creates a limit, which is going to be a big one that we will talk about for the time period where promoters they keep their fighters under contract. So you can't hold them on contract indefinitely, UFC. And there's a number of other things I think you talked about, but those were some of the bigger like points that stuck out to me. That was like, hey, this is setting off some alarms here, some expectations, some things that, things that are
The
not being
Ali Act
held equitably
basically
here.
was put in place by the United States Congress to combat the sort of shady dealings that promoters like famously Don King would use to make sure that he made far more money than his
Yep.
actual fighters did, and he had control over belt promotions
Mhm.
overall. Basically, when you look at boxing since the year 2000 until now, what you see is that the stars within boxing and majority of the money made within boxing, 80% of all money made in boxing is disseminated to the fighters, right? Now it is heavily weighted into like the big stars. We're talking about Floyd Mayweather, Canelo Alvarez, but the reason that they're able to become billionaires or at least 100 billionaires is because of the rules of the Ali Act and the protections in place by the Ali Act, which basically has allowed for 80% of revenue to go to fighters, 20% to promoters. Whereas when you look at MMA and specifically the UFC, you're seeing 20% of the revenue go to the fighters, 80% go to management in the organization. So if the Ali Act is removed from boxing, it'll be much more like the UFC. And as we've just complained about, when you have monopoly and you have unregulated, really strict monopolistic contracts like the UFC has, you get a really diluted product overall. It is not beneficial to us, the consumer, to see that. And it's especially not beneficial to the people making this product worthwhile and the reason we love the sport, which is the fighters themselves. It's a bad deal. It would be a very bad thing for the Ali Act to go away within boxing. Yeah. Yeah. Because that means, I mean, Turki Al-Sheikh and Dana White have talked about possibly, we can flood the market with Saudi Arabian money, sign them to exclusive contracts like the UFC has, where you can never get out of the contract at all. And then you can pay them pennies compared to what they used to be able to command. It would be kind of like, I don't even know, like an entire, it would be a massive existential shift in how boxing functions overall. And it would not be good.
I mean, we've already talked about like how boxing has already been like
Yeah.
it's been struggling, and to take away one of the few safety nets that it has would basically it would relegate boxing back to how it was before, and where it was just like
Yeah.
a mockery, a joke, and it kind of already is right now still, because but it could potentially doom
Yeah,
like a whole
absolutely.
generation
Well,
of
and
the
not only
sport.
would it doom a generation of the sport, but like in the same way where I feel like we're seeing people, there's less talent acquisition within MMA overall because of the monopolistic effects of the UFC, right? We're seeing less. We talked about this, even like if there was a massive turnover in a lot of these divisions, there's not even like an upcoming generation ready to go. And that probably has to do with the fact that
Mhm.
I mean, people talked about like when even before the Reebok deal, you were able to make more than your purse just in sponsorships. Um, right? Like
Right.
it was bigger money. You had more like contract negotiation leverage as you became a bigger star, and now you basically cap out at $600,000 for a title fight. Like that's about as much as you're going to make, and you don't make any extra sponsors. The UFC controls who you can be a sponsor with, right? So like if you're like, well, I want to go do a Nike commercial, they go like, oh, well,
Yeah.
we control the ability with who you get to work with. And so it ends up chasing away potential athletes, going like, it's not worth it. The money's not worth it. I can't support myself. I'm not going to do it. It'd be the same thing with boxers. These are all prize fighters in the end, and they need the biggest prize. And if the prize continually shrinks, why would someone get into that? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's bad. The UFC card was bad. We're being positive, but the news this week is bad. Um, yeah.
Yeah. It's
Anything else to add?
No, are you gonna watch?
No,
Are you
fuck
gonna watch
no.
the this weekend's card?
Why would I watch it?
Come on.
No, man. Because look,
I don't
what's gonna
know.
happen is there's gonna be probably a knockout or a decision. The MMA subreddit will post a little link quickly about like, hey, here's the result. I can click the link, and if I see two dudes standing next to the ref waiting for their hand to be raised, I'm like, great, it's a decision. I don't really need to watch the fight. Or if it's a knockout, I'll watch the gif of the knockout and go, oh, okay, maybe I'll look at the rest of the fight and I'll make my decision from there. But this card sucks. There's like 1.5 fights I'm interested in. Nah, man. I fucking sat through 50 minutes of shit fight this time, and this was the thing they wanted to charge me for. I'm not watching it. No way. It's not happening. Not not
I
happening.
respect that. I respect it.
But what we will do is, unfortunately, we don't get to do it in line with the overall UFC Seattle card because Dominic Cruz has pulled out and officially retired. So we will do a
Yep. Yep.
retrospective this coming Friday on the career of Dominic Cruz, the number
Mm.
one bantamweight fighter of all time, and we will talk about his ups and downs, his like truly extraordinary. Talking about Tatiana Suarez being out for 4 years and then coming back and having her game being frozen in amber and just not holding up. Dominic Cruz did essentially the same thing, and yet still was able to recapture the title from
Yes.
the very person everyone thought as the like evolution of his game in TJ Dillashaw. Um, it's a pretty impressive feat. So
Mhm.
we'll cover off on his career, and Colin hates him. I like him. We'll talk more about that. Well, okay,
I
you,
don't hate
hope he
him.
would die in a fiery crash, so maybe not hate, but anyway, we will talk about that on Friday. Um, always remember middleweight used to be good, or at least entertaining, and that this is what the UFC has done to us. I'm One Fight Fan Stewart.
I'm the other Colin.
Let's all agree to not buy any Sean Strickland pay-per-view cards in the future. Alright, everybody. Bye.
All right. Bye bye.